Hi, my name's Julia, and this is my presentation about taking a gap year. I really enjoyed my gap year, and to this day, it's the best decision I've ever made. I gained so many skills and experience and gained so much confidence in myself, and I really hope you find this presentation engaging and informative, and hopefully it will encourage you to take a gap year as well. So I took my gap year at the end of my A-levels, so this was in 2017 to 2018, and I was 18 years old. This was the right decision for me, as when I finished A-levels, I was so tired. I was done with studying. I really needed a break from everything, from studying, from essays and exams, from the structure of lessons. I desperately wanted to do something completely different. And so this meant that doing all of my different things in my year off after A-levels before university was the right thing for me. However, this is not your only option. I know other people who've taken gap years in the middle of university or at the end. Some adults might say they've taken a sabbatical, and this is also the same thing as a gap year. My point is, if you finish high school and know that you really want to take a gap year, but now doesn't feel the right time, that's fine. You can take it at another time. It's just at when I finished high school, in terms of money, convenience, and the time I had, as well as what I needed in terms of space and just the need for something different, at the end of A-levels was the time for me to do it. But your gap year will be much more productive, and you'll get so much more out of it if you take it at the right time for you. So it's something really important to think about, is when is the best time for you to take your gap year. So there were quite a few reasons why I decided to take a gap year, but it was definitely not something that was always in my mind. So all through high school, I was quite clever. I was in top sets for quite a lot of subjects. My grades were kept high, and the teachers generally kind of trusted me to get on with the work. And because of this, it was kind of assumed that I would go to university. I remember from an early age, in like year 7 and 8, sitting in English and science, and teachers going, "So what do you want to study at uni, Julia?" And me thinking, is that my only option? Is that the only thing I can do? And obviously I know now it's not, but at the time it really felt like I was being pushed into one direction. Because at home it was a similar story as well. Both of my parents met at university, and my sister from a very young age had been set on going to medical school, and so it was kind of just, again, the obvious decision for me was to go to university, and it felt like I was really being tunnelled into this one pathway. And where this was fine to start with, and it didn't really bother me, but as I got closer and closer to the end of high school, and particularly in sixth form, it really quite intimidated me, the thought of having no other option other than going to university. And I did look into options such as apprenticeships, or going to just starting a full-time job to start with, but my issue was I had no idea what I wanted to do. I had no confidence in where my future was going, and no matter how hard I tried to think, I couldn't think of what I enjoyed doing most, what I could picture myself working as in the future. And this was really quite daunting. However, I went through the motions and applied for uni anyway, as I was too scared to think of another option, almost. And I applied for psychology and criminology to study these, as I really enjoyed the classes in A-level for both of these topics. But I hadn't thought about a career in either of these. I hadn't thought past uni, really. I just thought they'd be alright to study if I had to. And it wasn't until I finished my A-levels, I'd accepted my place, and I was in the summer after my A-levels, and somebody mentioned to me, "Why don't you take a gap year and do something different?" And it was like a light bulb clicked in my head. It was like a weight lifted off my shoulders. I suddenly thought, I can have a break. I was so tired at the end of A-levels, and I was still very uncertain about going to uni to study something that I didn't really know if it was something I wanted to do forever. And having the idea of having a break and just giving myself a chance to think things through a bit more and maybe see if I like something different was really exciting. So I decided to go home, announced to my mum that I was going to defer my university offer. And that was that. I had another year to do something completely different other than studying, and I was really excited. When it came to the end of the summer and I'd made the decision to defer my university offer, I suddenly felt a little overwhelmed. I had all this free time and no idea what to do with it. I knew I really didn't want to waste this year. It'd be the last thing I wanted to do. But I really wanted to make the most of it, and that was quite hard to think of something to do. So firstly, I got a job. I wanted to start earning some money, and a cocktail bar local to me was hiring. So I went in, got a job, and I really loved working there. I worked there for 2 years in the end, and it was really fun. It was somewhere different that I'd never worked before. I learned new skills. I really enjoy that kind of busy environment and working under lots of pressure. and it was really fun. I met a lot of new people. The only problem was the spa was only open on weekends, so I needed to find some way to fill my time in the week. I started interning at my family church, doing kind of admin things like setting up meetings, liaising with outside contractors, booking spreadsheets, that kind of thing. And it was kind of a secretarial role, which just sounded a little bit boring to some people, but it was really interesting because I'd never worked in a place that wasn't in hospitality before, and so it kind of opened my eyes to a new way of working, and I found that there were some parts of this that I really enjoyed and some parts that I didn't so much. I also started tutoring saxophone, so I've been playing for a while and knew that I was quite good, and my music teacher suggested that I started tutoring, and so I did it for a few months, and I had to plan my own lessons, find my own students, that kind of thing. And I did enjoy it, but it did sort of teach me that it's not something I want to do in the future. I wouldn't go back and do that again, but I really enjoyed having that experience and knowing more than I did before. After a couple of months, my minister for my family's church sent me a link to a volunteering opportunity with ICS. So some of you might have heard of NCS, National Citizen Service, which is something you can do in high school. Well, ICS is partnered with this in International Citizen Service, so it's international volunteering trips, but they're all free, which is really cool because quite often people feel on gap years that they can't do any travelling or anything like that because it's too expensive, and I definitely thought the same. I couldn't afford to spend loads of money on this mad travelling trip, but I really wanted to do something, and volunteering with ICS was a really good way for me to go and see a country I'd never been to before for quite a long period of time, while gaining new skills and learning lots of different things. So when I read up on this trip, which was with a charity called Tear Fund, which was a charity I'd worked with before, and was really excited to have the opportunity to work with them again. And I thought it was a really great opportunity, so signed up for it instantly, because the volunteering was in South Africa, which is a country I'd never been before. So I ran downstairs and told my mum, and hoped that they would invite me to the next stage of my application process. And they did. Luckily, they invited me for an interview after reading through my application form. So I got the train down to London to their offices in Teddington. I went for a face-to-face interview, which was a really good experience in myself. I'd never been to London alone before, and navigating the trains, booking my own hotel was a really cool thing for me to do because I'd never done it before, so that was quite fun. And then I went to the interview. I learnt some new interview skills because I had a face-to-face, one-to-one interview and then a group interview as well, so it was quite cool to see the different ways of interviewing in a situation that wasn't for a job necessarily, so it was almost like a practice run for the future. And then I was successful in the interview, which was really exciting. So my next challenge was to meet my fundraising target, because rather than paying for the volunteering trip, they simply ask each volunteer to meet a compulsory fundraising target, and mine was £900. So I decided to plan a charity concert because my background's in music and I know a lot of different musicians from teaching and playing in different bands. So I used this to my advantage and planned, organised and pulled off quite a good charity concert, and I ended up raising around £1,500 altogether, so it was really successful. But I just really enjoyed the whole experience of going through the application process and then planning and organising this event. I also got to go down to London again for a training week to meet the other volunteers that I'd be going on this trip with, and that was really fun as well. It was like a little holiday and we all did some team building skills, and just the whole process for this volunteering trip gave me so many skills before I'd even gone on it, so it was a really good opportunity. Following this, I then flew to South Africa in March to begin my volunteering trip. I flew with various other UK volunteers and the adventures began. I was only there for about 3 months, sort of 12 to 14 weeks, but I could literally talk about it forever. It was such a packed full trip and we did so many different things. When we arrived, we were split into teams made up of both UK and South African volunteers, and each team was then placed in different areas of the country, and we were working with smaller community charities to help with their specific needs. So I was placed with the rest of my team in Limpopo, which is right in the north of South Africa, and we worked with a charity called Kurusunani. This charity was made up of local mums from the community who worked with local schools and youth organisations to help better the facilities that were available for the young people to give them a brighter future. While we were there, we taught in schools, we helped distribute resources, and work on the management of local schools. We started new after school clubs and built new playgrounds. We made motivational talks to the older students and gave them more information about their opportunities in terms of universities, apprenticeships, and to help them be ready for their future. And so many other things, my list goes on. It was such a packed full trip, and it gave me more insight into the things that I enjoy and the things I don't. It gave me much more confidence in my own skills and how far I can push myself. Coming out of the trip, I had a much better idea of what I wanted to do with my future. I knew the kind of thing that I wanted to carry on, and even if it's not a specific job role, I discovered that I really have a passion for management and business and just really wanted to build on my skills and knowledge in this area. So when I arrived back from the trip, I instantly contacted my university. This was one of the first things I did, and asked them if I could change my course from a course that I didn't know anything about to one that I was much more confident in. So I decided to study business management and psychology. 2 years in, I am loving this course, and I don't think I'd be able to say the same thing if I'd rushed into the course I originally applied for, that I couldn't really tell you what it would have been about because I wasn't interested in it. I just applied for it because I needed to. But the one I'm studying now, I really put a thought into and knew that the skills I would be learning are something that I would enjoy. Taking part in this trip has completely changed my life. It allowed me to understand better what I need and how I work in new teams. I learnt new skills relating to working with different cultures, standing in front of classes of people, thinking on the spot and working under pressure, and working in an environment that was completely alien to me. I'd barely ever even been away without my parents before, so working for 12 weeks in a completely new country was very intimidating, but it allowed me to push myself out of my comfort zone and learn tons of new things, and I'm a much better person for it. So I would highly recommend, if you ever get given the opportunity to do something like this, 100% do it, because now I'm so much more confident in myself and what I want to do with my future, and before I would not have been able to tell you at all. This trip also highlighted my passion for travelling. I learned that I really enjoy finding new places, exploring new cultures, and just seeing somewhere new that's outside of the town I live in. So since then, I have started prioritising going on little trips away rather than spending your money on new clothes and shoes, which I was doing before, saving up a little bit and going and taking my friends to new places. And it's just something that's made me a lot more happy, and something I didn't think I could do, but have learnt that it's actually quite feasible for me to do, and I've really enjoyed it. If you are thinking of taking a gap year, there are obviously a few logistical things that you need to think about. For me, to defer my course for a year, it was really simple. I simply just logged into UCAS, and I think there's a button at the bottom which says defer your course, and that was all I did, and it was all sorted. This isn't the case for everyone. I know for certain courses, for example medicine, you're not allowed to do this. So if you are thinking of taking a gap year, make sure in plenty of time you've researched whether or not you can before you start your uni course, and whether or not it'll affect your offer if they've already given you one. So don't leave it right to the last minute because you might be disappointed. It's definitely something that you should try and look into. And if you're unsure, contact UCAS or contact your university directly and ask them questions. They'll always be happy to help. Secondly, once you have deferred your uni offer, it's important to contact student finance. So log in with your customer reference, and if you've already received an offer of student finance, you'll need to tell them that you don't need it this year, but you'll need it the year after. This is especially important if you've got siblings. I had a few issues because I didn't do this step early enough, and it affected my older sister's student finance. So again, this is something to think about, and just make sure that you're aware it's something you need to do and you do it in plenty of time, just to avoid stress and disappointment. If you are thinking of taking a gap year part way through your uni course, it's definitely important to speak to your university first to check that it doesn't adversely affect any of your modules and things. It's not something you can just do a spur in the moment. I think it's definitely important to communicate with other people to check that it's not going to affect you down the line. Overall, I found the whole process of deferring my university offer quite simple, but only because I did it in plenty of time. So just making sure you know all the steps and not leaving it right to the last minute just to avoid disappointment is really important. So to finish off my presentation, I wanted to give you a few hints and tips in case you are really seriously considering a gap year. My first tip is to be brave. Making the decision to defer my university offer, going against what everyone had told me for years and assumed that I would do, was terrifying. I wasn't sure how everyone was going to take it, or even if it was the right thing for me to do. But taking this decision and having a gap year was by far the best thing I've ever done and the best decision I've ever made. And I'm really proud of myself for having the conviction in my thoughts and my feelings to make this decision all by myself. Also, be brave in how you use your time. You only get this year once. For a lot of people, this is the only time you'll get to have these kinds of opportunities. So don't hold back. Make sure you push yourself out of your comfort zone and do things that you wouldn't normally do, because why not? What's the worst that can go wrong? If you fail, you learn from that. And it's just really important to use this time wisely, not to waste it, and to push yourself and learn new things, learn what you like and what you don't like, because it's all experience. It would be really easy to simply sit at home watching Netflix or playing on your Xbox. And I'm not saying don't do that. After you finish school or university, you're going to be tired and you've worked really hard and you deserve a break. But make sure you have a balance. Use some time to chill out and do whatever you want, but also use some time to learn new skills and be productive. I promise you'll be really glad you did. Going to South Africa was way out of my comfort zone, and I'm not saying all of it was plain sailing, but even the bits I hated were worthwhile because I learned more about where my strengths are and how far I can push myself, and I discovered I had talents for things that I never even knew before. My second tip for taking a gap year is to have some kind of plan. It doesn't even need to be a super detailed plan, but having some kind of idea of how you're going to spend your time is not only helpful for you to feel less overwhelmed, but also helps in getting other people on board. If you tell your parents you want to take a gap year but have no idea what you're going to do with it, they're going to assume that you're going to be sitting at home all day, making a mess, eating all the food in the cupboard, and they're not going to be happy. But if you tell them you want to take a gap year but you're going to do this, you're going to be doing this, they'll be more on board because they'll see that you're doing things that are productive and you're going to learn new skills in the process. And that's a much more positive thing. Another tip is to have an idea of what you're going to do after your gap year. Because one of the most asked questions I had when I started telling people that I was going to take a gap year was, but will you really go back to uni afterwards? And in my head, I thought yes. I know that I am quite an ambitious person and university seems to be the way for me to go to get to where I want to be. I just don't know where that is right now, so I need this year to find out where to go. So knowing what you're going to do in the year after will make people feel like, okay, it's a better idea. What they don't want you to do is just float around for a year and then another year and never gain any more skills. So it's really important for you and for other people to just have a bit of a plan of what you're going to do during the year and following the year. Tip number 3 is to set goals. Having some kind of a goal for the whole year will help you to use your time wisely. I was terrified of wasting my year, so I set the goal to go away somewhere without my parents. In my head, this could have been anywhere for any period of time, but it was something I'd never done before and seemed quite intimidating to me. Your goal can be anything, but it's simply a way to ensure that your time isn't wasted. My final tip is to do something you're going to enjoy. There are so many things you can do within a gap year, but there's no point in spending an entire year doing something because it's something you would be expected to do or somebody else might have told you to do. If you're doing something that you're not enjoying and don't want to be doing, you're wasting that time. You might as well be sat doing nothing. You've got to spend this year doing something that's good for you, that's going to benefit you in the future. It's such a big move to make this decision, and it's really important to remember that it's your year and you should use it in the right way. That brings me to the end of my presentation. I hope you found it enjoyable and informative, and thank you very much for listening.